Let's talk some more about the big macro theme this week around inflation and the Fed's response to where the economy is right now. Joining us, Danielle DiMartino Booth, the CEO and Chief Strategist at QI Research. And Danielle, welcome back to the show. So it seems like once again, we're getting this kind of consensus building among Fed speakers that they are done for now. Do you think that is indeed the case? Because they said that earlier this summer, too, and then the dollar went on a big run for 3 months. So.
Yeah, I think we're a lot closer to the Fed having a double pause. Actually, the last time we spoke, I said that if there were 2 pauses in a row, then you should look for this to be the end of the rate hiking cycle. And we really have seen a lot of the Fed's tightening done at the long end of the yield curve with the benchmark 10-year Treasury yield. And what's more important is we've heard corroboration after corroboration. And now it's culminated with the person in the media, potentially most in the know with the Fed, publishing just a little while ago saying that the Fed's heavy lifting has been done, that they can stop raising interest rates at this point because enough damage has been done by higher long-end yields. We had another big bankruptcy announced today that the Fed's job on the rate side is finished. This has nothing to do, as I know you think I'm a broken record with this, but I always bring up the balance sheet. This has nothing to do with the tightening that will continue on the balance sheet side.
Well, that is important because it still means that there is some tightening strings kind of being pulled outside of just the hikes. And even the fact that we're not cutting anytime soon leaves that terminal rate at a level that should kind of tighten up the economy on its own anyway, as the theory, I guess.
That's certainly the case, and it's certainly the case for a lot of high-yield bond issuers who are hoping that rates would come back down to the zero bound just in time for them to hit their refinancings that were going to be coming due in 2024 and 2025. That does not appear to be in the cards, and to your point, what matters at this point is that rates stay at a very high plateau. That means that if you sold bonds as Corporation XYZ in the thick of the zero interest rate policy 2021, 2022 early, and you're hoping to be able to revisit zero interest rate policy, Jay Powell and all of the others, including the most dovish members, are saying, no, that's not going to be the case. We're going to maintain a high interest rate policy. Hashtag higher for longer is a real thing. And I think that we will continue to see companies that can cash flow through it able to refinance, and companies that cannot file for Chapter 11. It's just a fact of life.
All right, so we're in that higher for longer that should kind of weed out the, as the tide goes out, whoever's swimming without shorts, et cetera, the wheat from the chaff, whatever kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's the thing, too, to that point, Danielle, is that while we're in that higher for longer, I do kind of wonder if maybe there's another clause on there that's like maybe forever, because we keep getting this economy showing up better than expected. What then would really cause them to go the other way and start loosening? I mean, we just printed a 300,000 jobs print without any scary wage inflation. I mean, this is like mind-boggling to this point. So should we also be pushing out our expectations for cuts, like maybe to the point we stop trying to game it?
I'm not sure gaming is the right way to look at it, but if you look at these at the dot plot that we had last time, their endpoint starts with a 2 handle. They don't see a calamity anytime out over the next few years that would cause them to revisit the zero bound, and that in and of itself is meaningful. Even if we go into recession, I don't think that Fed policymakers intend to go back to the zero bound, and that will matter for office towers, for some multifamily, as we're seeing in commercial real estate. That will matter for many companies, and it's the level matters. And that's why I think that we'll all be so tuned into these Fed minutes to see how much backing there is to never respond, to never be a reactive Federal Reserve, at least under the chair of Jerome Powell, such that you're required to go back down to that zero bound. And again, I think that levels really, really matter here. And there were a lot of warts on that payroll report, but the one you mentioned is the most important, and that's that we're not seeing wage inflation take off. That's going to give policymakers a lot of ammunition to keep this higher for longer in place.
It's a very good point about the level, right? Because we've been so focused on the rate of change and how it's changing for so long, that level's going to do work when it's as high as it is. I'm curious, Danielle, what you think about the bond market explanation or justification, rather, for the Fed staying on hold. You intimated the Nick Timiraos article that cited some of the Fed research about how the bond market, quote unquote, is doing its job for it. How clear is that? How obvious is that? Because if the bond market's selling off on great data, then, maybe we will have a rebound in inflation, or at least sticky inflation. How much should they rely on this notion that the market's doing their own work for them?
So I think the idea there, and when they reference that, they're talking about financial conditions. And financial conditions, when they tighten enough, that means that, because remember, a few rate hikes ago, Jerome Powell would come out after the meeting and he would be resolute, and I'm going to keep tightening, and the stock market would just go, I don't care. And bond yields they really wouldn't go up that much to where it was problematic. That's no longer the case. Financial conditions were much easier 3, even 4 months ago than they are right now. And when Fed officials refer to what they're looking at and what they're studying, they're talking about financial conditions. And that right now is flowing through into higher bond yields, higher high yield junk bond yields, and lower stock prices. The last few days notwithstanding, of course, as we've seen the benchmark 10-year Treasury come a good 20 basis points off of the highs after that payroll report printed on Friday. It's all about the financial conditions. They're doing the heavy lifting for the Fed. That's what they're talking about.
Okay. And as it pertains to the prints the next 2 days, PPI and CPI, what kind of tolerance do you think the Fed has for a 3 handle on inflation? Is that something that they can stand by and allow if it doesn't go up again?
I think that's certainly going to be the case. We're seeing companies continue to close. We're going to see in the jobless claims data evidence of all of these strikes that are going on. So we know that income is being lost. There's no real avenue to press upwards inflation the way that it was in 21 and 22. Of course, you've got those student loan repayments resuming. You have the entire state of California, the world's 5th largest economy, making its federal income tax payments on October the 15th. So there are not a lot of sources right now that can press inflation upwards, given sticky prices at the gasoline pump. It's going to cause a substitution effect for many U.S. households where they're going to be forced to spend less on whatever else it is that they need to buy after they take care of essentials.
All right. Danielle, always a pleasure to get your thoughts here on a timely week. Appreciate it. Great stuff.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Danielle DiMartino Booth at QI Research.